Yes. In fact, Nikki and I are going to be playing at Westbury Music Fair on November 21st, 2nd, something like 22nd, I think. And it's our first show along with Peter Tork. And Peter Noon, sorry, people are just talking about Peter Tork. Peter Noon is not here, I assume. Let's hope not. No, I mean, I didn't want to insult him, that's all. No, he's great. I did 2 shows I'd never done until this past year. Davey and and I'll back up, I'm jumping around it chronologically, but we, about 5 years before he passed last year, we did a show or 2 a year together. And in the process of that, we got to know each other, but we really started to get to know each other in Saratoga Springs, where I spend my summers, and I'm at a house there, and I spend a good part. I use that as a base as we tour all over the world, but I come back there in the summertime because I live in South Florida, near where Davey lived. Both of you, I see. You came for the weather, right? Yeah. Well, no. You can't complain about this. I mean, I grew up here and have spent a lot of time here, as some of you may know. Anyway, Davey was the only person that I ever shared a bill with, shared a stage with. And during the course of I'd say about 6 years ago, he came up to Saratoga because Saratoga, I raised and breed thoroughbred racehorses. We had both a passion for doing that. He sort of lived my dream, which since I was a little boy, I used to go riding all the time, and he became a winning jockey, which I was always jealous and envious of him, and he talked to me a lot about the experience because I couldn't imagine, but his passion, and one of his certainly, was his horses and being around farm and being there. And if you do what we have been doing for as long, it's incredibly soothing, calming. It's an environment where you can really get in touch with yourself. They do a lot of thoroughbred and also just general equine therapies. Some of you may have heard this story that a lot of homeless kids, a lot of kids that have had really, really difficult lives, and broken homes, and homeless, they've been taken and been put on farms and coming from really difficult circumstances. And it's been incredibly beneficial to them. And being around horses, I've always found I get really centered and connected with my own self and my own spirit and all of that. And he and I talked about that. And I think that we shared not only that, but also the passion for racing. So about 6 years ago, right before we decided to do a show together and go out and do concerts together, he came and he was walking by my box where I was sitting, and we hung out the whole afternoon. And I went back to the barn where the jump horses are, which Davey was into, and we call them jump horses here. They call them, either steeplechasers or hurdlers, but they're jumpers. And in the UK, it's a much, much more prestigious, much bigger thing. And I spent a lot of time in England, and I know as Mickey has as well. But we had such a bond that day. And when I moved to South Florida, he had a place nearby. And when he would come down from up in Indiantown, where his farm was, I would see him, and he got really excited because we had both come originally from the theater. Many people didn't know about his background when you become very, very famous, as he did as a young guy. And I did. A lot of people don't realize that before you became a big star, a television star and very famous, that you were actually somebody who was working at your craft. And I always played music and played guitar and was into, all kinds of great great music when I was growing up. And my dad and my mom were both singers, and my grandmother was an opera singer and a concert pianist. So I had it all around me. Davey had grown up, as many of you know about him, I'm probably reiterating a lot of what you all know, but we shared a lot about the theater. He was a big fan of my dad's. And my father, Jack Cassidy, who was one of the premier theatrical actors in America. See, Dad? I still remember you. Yeah. He was kind of a legend in the theater, and I remember being 3 years old, and I realized when I was 3 and I lived here in Manhattan, I saw him in a matinee, and I knew from that afternoon, I always knew what I wanted to do. So we both had started in the theater. Me in my last year of high school in LA, I was working with the LA Theater Company, and I moved back to New York when I was 18, and my very first professional job was on Broadway. And I got flown out to do a screen test, and the next thing I knew, I was auditioning for television shows, and I did a bunch of the shows which some of you I think will probably remember, the hour dramatic shows like Bonanza, Mod Squad, Marcus Welby, the FBI, yeah, Ironsides. Yeah, it's been a while. Sometimes they run some of those shows, and my son came up to me about, I don't know, a year ago, and he said, "Oh my God, you looked like you were 12. What? I just saw you on Bonanza." That's right. I was on Bonanza. Hell, I love wearing them cowboy boots, I tell you. So anyway, I digress. I shared a lot of the same experiences with Davey about our careers, and for a long time, because of my success, it became very difficult for me to move on and become a serious actor, which I'm not sure I ever became, but at least take it seriously as an actor and as a musician. And Davey actually said to me, probably about a month before he passed away, we're talking on the phone, and we were about to do, in fact, he died 3 weeks before we were going to do our only show last year together in Miami, and that's when I decided to dedicate the show to him and do, for the first time, a lot of his music and the Monkees music, and it was very emotional, and it's starting to become so for me now, because like all of you who felt you knew him, you did, but to know him, I knew him as you did until the last 5 years, and I didn't know him before, but the person I got to know was loving, caring, hysterically funny, extraordinarily talented, frustrated. In that conversation I just mentioned a month before he passed, we would always share stories about like this and that from when we were in the theater, and I remember talking to him a lot about my dad, and he wanted us to do some theatrical things together on the stage in concert. And we had a disagreement about it because I said, although there are a number of your fans and mine would love to hear you do and me do some of our theatrical songs, or maybe one or two of them, most of the audience is here because of our television work and because of our recordings that we made as the Monkees, me as David Cassidy, and I had 2 careers, and as the Partridge Family. And I think that as much as it would be great for you and I to do it, Davey and I to do it, I think the fans would feel somehow disconnected from it. I felt in the end, very aligned with him, because we both became, at a really young age, teen idols. And because he bore the moniker, and I'm giving you the artist's, actors, singers, songwriters perspective, which he and I both were, he felt like being in the Monkees never allowed people to, in the industry, to take him seriously as an actor. And as his friend, and as someone who had gone through it, and had fortunately arrived, because I was lucky enough to have gone through other channels and my destiny was a different one. But, you know, I'm hesitant to say this, but he was so talented, and he was such a wonderful actor and had such depth and humor that although we all loved him in the Monkees, and I certainly was as big a fan as any of you out there, I mean it, I think in many ways for him as a person, as a man, his creative part was cheated because people couldn't take him seriously. And you have no idea, as a talented artist, I do know how frustrating it can be to be that guy. So I can remember hugging him, putting my arm around him, going, if there's anyone on the planet who understands it, I do, outside of Mickey and Peter. There are very few people who would be able to understand it, because we began, even though some of us were musicians before, we began as professional actors. And the fame and the impact that the Monkees had on all of you, and that Davey and Mickey and Peter and Mike had on me, was the same as a lot of you felt the same connection, or my fans and Partridge Family fans felt about me. So there are so many parallels that we share, and I wanted to be here today because I got to meet two of his daughters, which I had never met before. And it's a very touching thing when you have a connection to people that you love and you care about. And I love him. And I love I just want to finish this story. I tend to go on, and I'm sure you have a schedule. But there's...
No, it's okay.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I mean, I just showed up. I drove in and changed my shirt. Seriously. I got a plane to catch, but I'm here because I wanted to be here for the girls and for him, and also for you, because you're the reason that we get to do what we do. There is something in me now that feels connected to you through him, and now through Mickey. And believe me, I'm really excited. Mickey and I started rehearsing and putting the show together for March. And you know, the first time I had met Mickey once or twice back in the mid-late 70s, and I'd spent a little bit of time with him, not a lot. I mean, we were both at, you know, like at parties where people, musicians we knew, and hung out and talked a little bit about him. But the respect I have for all of them is enormous, because I know I experienced something myself that was so sensationally successful that you don't come out of it the same way on the other side. You know, for me, 5 years of touring around the world and being that guy changed my life. And in many ways, I mean, I can't thank God or all my fans enough for giving me that experience and still caring about my work, so I get to do what I love to do still. And the talent, the appreciation I have artistically and creatively for all of them is enormous, and that's great respect amongst peers. And when I saw Mickey again the first time a couple months ago, I put my arms around him and I said, man, the journey you have been on, and he looked at me and he said, right back at you, brother.